What's going on, Soul Tribe? And welcome to Alchemist Astrology. Justin here, and bringing another little nugget out to the Soul Tribe archive. And in today's video, I'm going to be talking about Jupiter in Capricorn in the ninth house. And this is an interesting one, I think, for Jupiter to be in. Now, when you're talking about Big Papa, the nature of Jupiter gives birth to things. Jupiter promises abundance, the relief from all bad things, the fruits of one's labor, the justice. There is a trust and a faith that Jupiter brings for something brighter, something more, something better. you know Jupiter's like Santa, because because Jupiter does take a year to move through a zodiac sign there, so it's not quite like Venus, and that's something to pay attention to with Jupiter. Jupiter is part of is going to be the most positive planet for a day chart, so that's something to think about. And when we're talking about a night chart, it's not that Jupiter's not going to give, but it's just not going to be as potent or as like Venus would give. And that's something to compare the two, just kind of see how that difference kind of shows up there. But Jupiter is one of the benefics, so we love that. And yeah, it brings this alliance with great people, and brings about this love and desire, and yeah, really just a really great energy when we're working with Big Papa. And then when you talk about Capricorn, they are ruled by Saturn. And they are the cardinal earth sign, and they're one of the nocturnal signs. So there's this receptive quality to Capricorn. Capricorn's a very practical sign. You have to be when Saturn's hovering over you. But I do think that, they are really effective with the material, with the earth. There is a weight, though, the responsibilities of the things that you do, take care of. I mean, just in taking care of the body just alone, that's the first, the tool for things to materialize. And so there is sometimes a lot of that pressure that comes on, because I think that Capricorn is one that is able to, I think, work with the earth in a way that is, they can see things for the long term. Like there's that really great vision for that, to be able to, but how to construct it for the, I think about, there's this Capricorn that I know, that Capricorn sun, that was mentioning that they want to grow an avocado tree. And I have to look this up, but I think it takes like 40 years. It takes a long time for them to grow. But you think you take care of that thing in 40 years, you got food, you got oil, you got Capricorn, and then you got a whole avocado forest. And then look at that, and then then you turn into a prophet. That's Capricorn, but it is, well, an energy that, and I'm just talking in general, that does get better with time, but it does require a discipline, a sternness. There's a austerity, and I think that can sometimes help explain that aloofness, maybe sometime with Capricorn. But then you talk about the ninth house. This was known as the house of God, and it's one of the Caden houses. And some of the themes that this house is going to cover are going to deal with like travel, especially to like foreign places, foreign things and people, to wherever you happen to be at. This can deal with like education, but it can deal more specifically with like that sort of like higher education, and also kind of deals into with your, well, not kind of, definitely dips into like you in terms of like religion, your beliefs. This is going to deal with like spirituality, divination, astrology, augury, dream interpretation. I think it's another one for the ninth house. And then we get law is another thing that comes in with that one. So when you're working with this placement, a few things to consider. One, you'd have a Taurus rising by whole sign, and you're going to want to look to Saturn, because Saturn is going to import the themes of this house and the 10th house, which deal with like your career, your advancements, any sort of like ambitions you have in life, your accomplishments, your reputation, your public life. And now it's going to import those themes to wherever Saturn is. And then Big Papa is going to import the themes of the eighth house, which deal with like death, inheritances, and the assets and resources of others. And also you're going to import the 11th house to this house, which deals with like your friends, your groups, alliances, and like your hopes and dreams and things. So one other thing to kind of talk about this when you're working with this placement, this is not a particularly strong place for Jupiter to be in. This is where Jupiter finds itself in its fall. And that's not to say that Jupiter can't do anything, but it's just its expressions have a harder time to come out, because it's in a state where it's lowered, as opposed to, counter to its exaltation of Cancer. Jupiter is used to being abundant all the time, whereas Capricorn, that abundance is something that may take a little bit longer for Jupiter to show up there. So that's just one thing to just kind of pay attention to. And I'm going to speak of this more so from the side of like a day chart, but in a night chart, just kind of tone it down a little bit, unless considering, and there's a number of things that's going to factor in as well, as far as like aspects and things like that. But one thing to pay attention to, like that, this ninth house would be, especially in the day chart, going to be one of the most, the most positive houses in your chart. And so, one, I think it is really important with Jupiter, because Jupiter also deals with this sense of knowledge, but it's not in like, it's different than like mercurial knowledge. It's that knowledge, that kind of spiritual, sort of Gnostic, esoteric sort of knowledge. And I think that that's really great, considering that Jupiter rules that eighth house as well. Occult studies can fall into the eighth house. Looking at maybe either whether it's different religions, whether it's different practices of spirituality, seeing people, getting to, not necessarily subscribing to different beliefs, but seeing what you can learn from different cultures, I think can be a really great one, for Jupiter to do. Some things that you can do, some really nice long-term things that, Jupiter is, if not by the ascendant, is at least by whole sign, is trying, have an overcoming trying to the ascendant. So that's really nice, to have Jupiter there. So I think the more that you broaden your world, the more that it's going to open up what you can really do, and the connections that you can form. Jupiter, promises that those alliances and unions, and we're talking about Jupiter ruling the house of friends. So that could be the more that you put yourself out there, learning different things, being inquisitive, and seeing, just making space for other practices. That just gives you just a huge breadth of knowledge. It gives you a way of connecting with people, because in that, that's going to introduce different languages into your world. Maybe you find one that you're interested in, and then and then that's where that education can come in, because Jupiter is, something where that ninth house can be something where it is going to like a university, a college, or something like that. But I think even just taking it's the study that we're doing after we get through that grade school, that sort of like third house energy, where you just had to do those things, if that opportunity was available. But this is the studies that you do after the fact. And I think both of them also, have this theme of just education in general. But, that is, I think the more that you invest in different knowledge, and that's going to connect you to different people who are going to have different resources that they can make available for you. And that could be something where, maybe you happen to go to school, maybe go to continue that line of education, and who knows the type of people that you're going to meet, who are going to maybe support the works that you want to do with your life. And, that's a big thing, I think, for this placement. That eighth house is other people's resources and inheritance. But I also like to think that that's not just what other people are giving to you, but it's also what you intend on leaving behind. What is your legacy? That 11th house hopes, 8th house inheritances. And I think that it's the more that, again, that you invest yourself, the more that you have to leave behind. So leaving, making sure to make those works, those hopes and dreams tangible, in thinking about what does your great work look like? What is that Capricorn story? Because it can be epic, and it can be something, especially in an earth sign, that can, have a long lasting, I think, effect, and it's Jupiter. So it's going to elevate to whatever degree that looks like. So, I think that's something really just kind of nice to think about there. I think another thing, just having that, I think a good relationship maybe with just maybe doing pulling a tarot card a day or something, or maybe learning into the I Ching, or maybe just whatever, maybe casting some dice. I got these kind of astrological dice here that came with one of my tarot decks a few years ago, and they're neat. They're the reasons that I came up with this idea to do this. So you never know what sort of inspirations can come from that. Where those creativities come from. Plan trips. Whenever you get a chance. Jupiter doesn't move super fast. It again takes about a year to move in each sign. So you can plan a trip. A year, maybe every other year, something like that, and Yeah, again, broaden your world. Go to like different spiritual sites. Maybe go to like, if you can visit Stonehenge, or going to different, maybe even like different, like, museums. Go see the histories of different places and things. That could be something that's just really kind of fascinating, and just kind of neat there. I can definitely see too, this Jupiter getting a lot of support, though, maybe through the groups and friends. It may not be like a whole bunch, maybe we're talking Capricorn, but at least, if there are going to be some, maybe there'll be some, some, at least some loyal ones there. I also think too that I think that there's th- that in giving, when Jupiter talks about being the relief from all bad things, again, I think that's not just something that you're just getting. I think that's something that maybe it's been getting. And Jupiter can deal with justice. So maybe even getting into something involved with like law, or maybe some sort of like activism or something along those lines, where you're helping people, relieve people from their bonds, in a sense. This could be from like maybe financial bonds. Maybe because those eighth house can deals with like debts and taxes and things. So maybe you're helping people, getting like some sort of like financial education, helping that, or if what am I looking for, like financial literacy or something like that. Just, and then, helping, and in that, just like doing that kind of good work, of course, just kind of always comes back, and just, it could just be in the term of knowing that you've just like made the world a little bit better. You've improved someone's life in some sort of way. And sometimes those small things can have, what may seem like just a regular, like, oh yeah, just something that I do, that can have a long lasting impact on someone. And and you'll get that what goes around comes around. I think that's something really nice to think about too with Big Papa. But I think those would be just some base things that I would talk about with this placement. I was even, one last thing, I'm just thinking about with like the groups and alliances, being involved maybe in like some type of like fraternity, sorority, sports groups. That could be a place where you find yourself getting some sort of like scholarships and things, if you to continue like education. That's just another thought there. But yeah, if you have this placement or know someone who's working with this placement, excuse me, down in the comment section, yeah, let us know how this is showing up for you, because it's always really neat to hear how these energies show up and how differently they can show up, but there can still be that sort of common theme that's there. And if that's something where, if you want to navigate the space more personally, down in the description box, there's a link to book a consultation with me. So definitely check that out. And if you want to support the work that I'm doing even further, down in the description box, there's a link for my Patreon, and there's a couple tiers there. One of them is for the Lucky Day podcast. That's tier 1, and that's just a podcast where I talk about the most auspicious days for the month for any endeavor that you want to plan, whether it's planning a trip, or maybe you wanted to submit an application for a grant, or whatever that happens to look like there. That's available for you. And then the second tier gets the podcast plus a personalized monthly report from me. So that's another thing that's available for you as well. So yeah, absolutely, go see those resources. Last thing that's down there, and I'm sure there are other things down there too, but there's the lunar shenanigans, and that just talks about the astrology of the moon, and it's a weekly show podcast thing that talks about what sign the moon's in, what phase it's in, when it happens to go void of course, and just the general feel of the energies each week, and to just show how significant the moon really is, and how it can show up on a regular basis, and how syncing up with that good old moon, keeps you in rhythm. The moon's a great timekeeper. But yeah, just another resource down there for you. But until next time, stay mindful out there. Keep raising that vibration through the roof. And I will catch you on the next one. Later.